Jim just started writing choruses and forced me to write choruses. That's how
I've been
works.
trying to get him to do it for every album, and he's always like, no, I'm not doing it.
Well, you really tried. All right, so, okay, this goes back years, but he fucking...
How sustainable is your high-range singing? Is something you're looking forward to doing live?
It's something I'm working on. It's very hard to do live, and it's something I'm also regretting doing. And I wish I would have gone a little easier on myself, but it's something that
You've hopefully got some interesting things coming up in your world. The album's been out for a bit. Do you have some tour plans?
Yeah, I mean, we actually have, for the first time ever...
I was first introduced to this band, 156 Silence, via their single Better Written Villain, which was released earlier this year and immediately grabbed my attention and quickly became one of my favorite songs that have come out in the year 2024. Now, since then, I've heard the entire album that's on called People Watching, and at the end of my first listen through, my brain was destroyed. It is an incredibly intense experience. There's so many interesting and unusual details in there, but lots of satisfying moments as well. And I'm very excited to have an opportunity to chat to vocalist Jack and guitarist Jimmy from the band 156 Silence about that album and other details about this brilliant band. Hi, folks.
Hello.
Welcome on in.
Hello.
Thank you for being here. Now, listening to this album, it sounds to me like an album made by some folks who are looking at the world around them and the people in it and thinking, is this really the best we have? Is this the best we have to offer? Can we not do more? Is that a fair assessment? Or how would you put in your words the kind of themes that you're bringing into this album, the discourse you're trying to inject into the world with this record in particular?
Yeah, I
Perhaps,
think that's the perfect way to put it. Is this the best we can do? That's basically how we take every approach is like, can we do better than this, or can we do better than the last thing we did? And that's, I think, what we did on this one. And what we're doing now with the new stuff we're writing already.
Oh, exciting. Right. Well, that sounds like a healthy thing to do. Right? You can push your music forward if you're striving to be better. But also, I have to imagine there's a risk that could be a tiring process if you're constantly trying to evolve and the rest. How do you find that balance of things, Jimmy? Like, how do you push your guitar writing and work forward and not go like, can I just coast for a bit?
Jimmy's
please?
a fucking machine. He needs it. He needs to make these songs. He does it on his own time, and he's a beast.
Yeah, before we even recorded People Watching, I had, I think, 16 or 17 songs for the next thing.
Oh, God.
Just, I don't know. I like, the way that I write, I like to like pick what the new thing is, like what the vibe is, and then just write until I hate myself. And then I'll have like,
and then you write some more.
No. No, I don't. I'm done.
Okay, great. Wow. All right. One bit of housekeeping I need to do for the sake of a viewer who asked this question. And I've Googled it, but I'd like to check if this is true. The name 156 Silence, and I'm sorry, I'm sure you get this question a billion times. What is the significance of that, and how do you say it? Because they read it as 156 over silence, like they're doing a blood pressure reading. That's not correct, is it, Shirley?
No. Okay. I mean, you can say it however you want. I mean, we say 156, 156. It doesn't matter.
Okay, grand.
Yeah,
well, it's a pretty unique
up to
name.
the listener. Most people just say 156, but
okay,
yeah, I don't care. It's just a name.
I absolutely subscribe to that. There's plenty of names in the past. You'd be like, no one would name their band the Red Hot Chili Peppers and expect that to be a thing. But the music makes the name, I think, so makes absolute sense. Now, most of the albums that are my favorites of all time are growers. I find it very rare that an album will grow on you and then eventually decrease in value, but something hits you immediately and then it kind of can potentially fade. And I think that's because of details and layers and essentially it's like almost mini Easter eggs within songs. On future listens, you get more out of it. Are those things you're thinking about as you write? Like, how can we add more depth to this?
Absolutely. Yeah. Every song is like layered with dozens of synths, keyboards, sound effects, just like how much can we put in here before it's too much? And you're obviously not going to notice all that like immediately. So.
Yes, but therein lies the tricky part because the more you add, the more cluttered it could get. How are you discovering where the line is for how many layers is too much when you're in the studio and you're listening to it back in the speakers? Or like, how do you figure out that line for yourselves?
Well, we do extensive demos before we go to the studio. Like, for the most part, the songs don't really change that much. We just add. So, like, for these songs, I already had a good amount of stuff on it already, and then we added more in the studio. I think we just kind of do it until we go, all right, that's too far. I mean, just keep going until, you know, who knows?
Yeah, I think that we fuck around to the point where we're like, all right, this is getting stupid, and then it's like it's right in that middle ground.
Yeah.
But then what's interesting about that to me is that I can understand that from the point of view of the songs within the album that are like full length sort of songs, but you also have like interlude moments, which on first listen I was very grateful for because I see them as kind of like palate cleansers. But those aren't so much tons of layers. They're kind of, you almost strip things back to a certain point. How do you plan those in or know when actually at this point we maybe would need to rein things in a little bit and allow people to think about what they just heard before we then change up?
Jimmy, go ahead.
Well, on every other album, we did this thing where the interludes are kind of like baked into the songs, where whether it's like an actual part of the song or just like something on the end. But this album very much was a choice to do actual interludes. I don't know. I was just kind of inspired by a lot of bands bringing that back. Like one, for example, for me was Loathe. They do those cool interludes throughout the album. And I'm like, you know, we can do something like that
rolls,
just in our own way.
Low rolls.
Nice. Okay, great. We have at least one influence marked on this. I mean, how much are you plugging yourselves into? I mean, clearly you've kind of answered this question in a way, into the newer bands and the new directions other people are doing. Because I suppose there's a risk between being influenced too much, perhaps, by what else is out there and losing some of your own core, like unfettered inspiration. Or is that something you're worried about, or you will always have your own voice no matter what you listen to?
Well, we were actually talking about this recently when you're writing the new stuff, how neither of us really listen to metal when we're writing. Like, I don't listen to any contemporary bands, you know, some of the older stuff for sure, for like, you know, just coming up with new influences. But for the most part, like, I stay away from anything like that when we're writing so that I don't just end up sounding like something else. But
I'm trying to write more, get better at writing choruses, so I'm listening to more, I don't want to say pop music, but like just...
You can.
Pop music, yeah.
There's nothing wrong with pop music. I see. Yeah, I got the impression from a snippet I heard of another interview that is this, because I'm not super familiar with your back catalog. I listened to some of the previous album to get a bit of a historic reference there. But the kind of melodic choruses are somewhat of a new thing for this band, is that right?
Yeah.
What inspired that change? Was that in the same vein of you want to push yourself and try new things? Or is this something you've been sort of wanting to do for a while but didn't find the right tone or the right songs to put it in?
Jim just started writing choruses and forced me to write choruses.
I've been trying to get him to do it for every album, and he's always like, no, I'm not doing it.
Well, you really tried. All right, so, okay, this goes back years, but he fucking, on the EP, that was where you started to get like, all right, I think I want to write choruses. And I'm like, okay, well, that's how The Wrong Sense came. Not The Wrong Sense. Yes, The Wrong Sense.
Yes.
And obviously I did too much vocally on that lyrically, and it should have actual choruses that repeat. And I have never been good at doing that because I feel like choruses need to be catchy, obviously one, but like they have to be meaningful and not just like, oh, this is cringe or dog shit. So, like, being able to write a chorus has always been hard, but he's making me do it, and it's like, it's helping me for sure.
I mean, I'm not knowing the history of all the previous albums the same way. Like, I would certainly think it's working. I mean, my favorite, well, I mean, Better Written Villain is still my favorite song. And there's so much melodic singing in that, but then you anchor it with the ferociousness of the screams as well. I think it absolutely works. You have quite a unique singing tone, I think, and it sort of depends on the song. The higher in a range you go, and I don't know whether this is in the production end of things, but it almost sharpens up somehow. Like, how sustainable is your high range singing? Is something you're looking forward to doing live?
It's
Or is that
something
something
I'm
you have to
working
work
on. It's very hard to do live, and it's something
Sure.
I'm also regretting doing. And I wish I would have gone a little easier on myself, but it's something that I can do, and I just have to take care of myself and like prioritize the breathing methods and the warming up and all that shit. But it is hard to do with the screaming as well, especially like you can't really depend on determine how hot the room is going to be or like how you're going to feel that day. And it's like, just got to do your best, I guess. I'm just trying to do my best.
You'll find a way. There'll be some technique or way of doing it to make it sustainable. Because surely in the studio you would have had to do multiple takes, or were you able to just kind of fire it out in a couple and not have to worry about the tiredness?
I don't know. I'm all right in the studio. What do you think, Jim? There he goes. As I ask him a question as he takes a drink.
Good timing of the sip of water.
No, I think you're good in the studio. I mean, there's multiple takes for everything. Just
Yeah, we do.
You always think you could do better, but
yeah, there's and the amount of layers and like so on Irrational Pool, I recorded that whole album in like 2 days or something.
yeah.
And then Narrative, we did like the same thing. I recorded that whole album in like 2 days.
I want to say 3 or 4, but yeah.
So like,
Wow.
People Watching was the first album I had like 3 weeks to record the whole fucking thing, and that gave me a lot of leeway and time for us to like think about stuff that we wanted to add or different layers, different parts for Ryan or Lucas.
Right, yeah, because the potential menace of that is the more time you give yourself, the more you can try and perfect things or over change them.
Yeah.
Do you have a difficult time going, that's done, that's the take, we're good? Or are you able to go, I think I've got what I want? Or you try and focus on the rawness of it, and if you capture that somehow, then everything else is secondary?
So for me,
sorry.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing. I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like what I do is I'm fine with being like, all right, that's it, we're done. But then 6 months later is when I'm like, fuck, I hate this now.
I think even Eminem has said he can't listen to his records because he's like, all I hear are the things I wanted to do better now.
Yeah.
That's tough. That is hard. You have to just time capsule it and move on. I guess the joy is when you play it live, you can change versions. By the end of a tour, you might have kind of different versions of the deliveries of songs. How much touring do you do on the regular? Is that a big part that you enjoy, or is that something you do as and when you can fit it in throughout the years? How important is that to the 156 Silence sound and package, as it were?
I think it's very important. I mean,
It's important for every band. Like,
well, yeah. If you want to do this,
like everybody needs to tour. You need to play for empty rooms if you haven't. You need to get out there and play for people that have never heard of you, that you want to win over, because you want to win over every crowd you play for. So not everybody's going to know you, and not everybody's going to fucking be there for you, but you want to make them feel like, wow, that band was sick. I need to listen to that band.
I once played a gig when I was in a pop punk band, and I didn't realize this at the time, but it was a metal gig. And by the second song, when I finished that, there was a very small handful of applause. And after the third song, there was no applause. And then I was like, you're going to love this next song because it's a pop song, like cover. Have you had instances in this band of yours, which is quite an intense sort of hardcore at times feel, where you've had audiences that aren't necessarily ready for the absolute heaviness? And how have you learned how to kind of win those sort of crowds over in your own way?
we've played so many bad shows over the years. I mean,
doesn't have to be a bad show. I loved that show. It was fun because it's like,
I just
wow.
mean like, so before
nobody, 0 people, 2 people.
I was
The
just gonna
bar
say
staff.
like we've played with so many like different bands, and like our sound is very, it could go either way, right? And like we just did a deathcore tour, and I was so nervous. We were playing like
All these
mostly
new
singing songs,
yeah.
and I'm like, they're gonna hate it, and like it's gonna go terrible. But it was like one of our best tours ever. So
Nice. I get the sense that the times are changing in some of that in current days. Like increasingly, lineups aren't like 3 metalcore bands that sound the same.
Yeah,
there is a
people
bit of a
like
mix.
mixed
You might have
lineups.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing. I'm hoping. I think it makes sense that maybe it's the advent of the internet and people discover more genres, and that I think is a really positive thing. If you were to try and describe your sound to people who haven't heard you before, where would you even begin? Or would you just go, here's some headphones, just have a listen?
Man, Jim, you can take this one.
Oh, thanks, dude. I mean, I usually will just say, like, if this person knows, like, metalcore and things like that, you know, we're just like a weird, creepy metalcore band is usually what I'll say. Like take like a Korn influenced metalcore band or something like that. Like, that's usually where I'll start, and then they can get the nuance from there. But it's, I mean, there's so many different aspects to it. Like, I don't know how to properly just get it out there immediately.
It's like emotional core.
I don't like that.
I don't like it either, but that's what it is.
Heavy
Twin
emotion.
Peaks metal.
We'll workshop it. We'll get there. Because the impression I also get is most bands don't form going, right, let's make a insert particular niche rock music core band. Generally, you might have very different influences amongst yourselves and things you listen to, but this happens to be, when you play together, this is the communal sound that emanates from you. Does that sound kind of, because it's quite a, you know, the kind of music that you create that I adore is very niche still, and I think it will always remain somewhat niche. So it's a hard thing to have chosen to do. You have to be compelled. Like, what has led you, that inspired you to go, I want to make this like intense, dark, energetic music in this way?
I mean, I think it's just kind of a reflection, too, of all the other kind of movies, video games, things that we like. They all have this kind of tone to it. And, like, I've said this before, but, like, a big influence for me is Silent Hill. Jack hates when I bring this up because I bring it up all the time.
I don't hate it up. I don't hate it. He just brings it up all the time.
I got you.
But, like, the vibe of that, I've always wanted to kind of get that kind of vibe in music. Like, the weird, dark, creepy, sad, but, like, looking at all the things that we like, a lot of the things that overlap for all of us are those like weird, either scary or sad or dark, whatever. And all that stuff kind of makes its way into the music. And that's kind of just what the goal has been for at least a couple albums now, is trying to get something like that.
Right. Well, I think you've definitely succeeded. The most unsettling on first listen thing, but I now oddly crave hearing, is that sort of multi-layered spoken word delivery in songs like or Blood Loss. I hadn't heard anything like that before. The first time I was like, what is it's like he doesn't even care. But there's sort of, it's almost a harmony. There's like 2 vocal parts. It's almost harmonized, but not quite. But they're definitely 2 different sort of registers that collide together. But I heard that as well in the previous records. This is not a new thing for you. So how did you discover that as something? Was that something you're just adding layers in the studio and went, oh, I kind of like that? Where did that come from?
We started that with Irrational Pool. That's when that began a thing, was the low talking and like the high talking that's like this at the same time. And it blends together like a little demon. And I call it the Gonzo vocals, and Jim makes fun of me. But
what is that from again? I forget.
I don't know anymore. It doesn't matter.
But like, how did you come up with it? We've never actually even talked about this. You just did it one day.
What, the vocals?
Like that whole idea.
It got inspired from a band that we used to like and don't like anymore because we're not allowed to like that band. Daughters.
Yeah.
Anyways, it's inspired by that and put in our own way. And I think that's where that came from. And I like it. I don't know. It's something that we do now.
You sound unsure that you like it. Does it feel like it's a signature now that's part of your sound that you think the audience is going to want?
We're kind of I'm trying to like lean it into a singing form of that, but we'll see how it works.
Because there is a bit of melody to it. Because even, I know that there's 2 vocals that go together with it and a different kind of notes to them, sort of. But even as in the main vocal part of it, it goes up and down like kind of in notes. There's a bit of a dynamic to it. Another question I had, Jack, were you ever a drummer at any point? Because some of your vocal deliveries.
No, I have no rhythm.
What I get from your vocals when you go between the sort of more spoken word and up into the scream, you repeat interesting rhythms as you do that. They loop like a drum beat would do. There's a kind of consistency to that. My Google's talking to me. So how is that purely accidental? It just happens to be where the emotive words you want to lean into with the scream happen to loop?
I think that might just be coincidental. I don't know if I really am smart enough to plan that.
Oh, well, it certainly works. It's good. And then I think it might have been in Blood Loss. So that kind of chilled, creepy spoken word bit, I think it was in that. And you get to a line where you say, like, I can't grind my teeth any duller. I love the storytelling of that, because when you get to that point, you're like, this, I don't think I can go any further into this personal internal horror. And then the full band and scream vocals come in. How intentional was that switch up at that point? Because that feels like it was
that was
completely
absolutely
considered.
intentional. Because like it's building up, you know something's gonna happen. It's like bow, 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 bow.
Yeah, it just snaps.
And Carson
That's
absolutely
immensely
nailed
satisfying.
that part. Which he wasn't even supposed to be on that part intentionally. Jim didn't think there it needed a feature, but I did. I thought it needed a feature, and I think that he killed it.
I think the features on this record totally work. I heard you say in another interview that you thought you said something like, I felt like this album needed some features. What's the benefit I mean, I think they worked, just to be very clear. What made you go, I think this needs that? Or what inspired you to add that as something intentionally before kind of going into adding them in?
Well, on the new stuff, I think every song needs a feature. I want as many features as we can get. It's like Jim shaking his head, but fucking, I love when bands collaborate with each other, and I think that it helps find other bands that you wouldn't normally find. And if when you hear somebody that you wouldn't expect on somebody's album, it's like, oh, hell yeah, this rules. So I love features.
That's a fair point. Yes, they're good stepping stones between bands and discovering other things. And also, depending on how you write, it could add new creative ideas and things. So did they contribute to what they did, not only in the delivery of it, but also in the shaping of it? Or was it very much, here's the line, the demo, can you please bring your own voice to it?
Trey from Mouth for War was the one that really wrote his own part. Carson and Craig, I wrote their parts, and they did exactly what I wanted, and it was perfect. But Trey had his own idea to do something, and he did an even better job than I had written in the first place, so we were very happy with that. Trey rules, Mouth for War rules.
Yeah. I imagine both of those could be quite satisfying for different reasons. It must be great if you said it to someone, they're like, yeah, this is great, I'll do exactly what it is, and you're like, well, I nailed it. But on the other hand, it would be great to have someone add something new that you didn't necessarily think of.
Yeah, especially when it's like, you could have done a little better and they do better, and it's like, oh, yes, he did what I needed done.
Great. Well, yeah, those have absolutely worked out well. I had a question from my brother on one particular song, and it seems like there's a few fans that have also honed in on this particular part. It's in Target Acquired. There's this scream vocal thing that happens, and there's a massive intake of breath, and then another scream vocal. And the question originally was, is that whole thing one take? But when I hear it, it sounds like there's like 3 takes per scream, because it almost like revs up and then revs up and then revs up, and then it's got an inhale and then it goes again. What's the take on that moment? Do you remember?
Yeah, that was one take.
So,
I believe so. It was either one take in the studio or one take in the demo. I can't remember which one.
I mean, it was one take, but you did multiple different
versions.
versions
There's different layers and versions. But
every time you did it, it was still one take though. Like that was the whole point, was for it to be one take.
Yeah. Just
That's
to be like,
sick.
oh, this is cool, I can do this.
And then, not unlike the high vocals, now you have to do it live. Are you looking forward to that, or are you like, I'm going to be ready?
We'll see.
That's when you hand the mic to the crowd.
We're going to practice the set. Our new set, we start practicing this Sunday, so it will be a rude awakening to see what I can and can't do.
Nice. Because I mean, am I just hearing things? It did sound to me like the sustained screams in there sort of. There's 3 like mini sections that sort of revamp. Are you doing a sort of vocal reset, or is that something that's happening under the bottom of it with the guitar tone going up and down? Am I
No,
just hearing
it's just
things?
all vocal, just like.
Oh, that's awesome. I've not heard that done before like that. That's why it was so confusing. Like, that's got to be like, different takes that come in and like sort of crossfade in and out. That's sick. Because then that means you can do it, in theory, live. Which is very
We'll
exciting.
see.
Very, very cool. Now, guitars, especially for this record, the tones you're trying to create are pretty key for setting the right tone of it. And what I really enjoyed about your work on this is that there isn't any that I can think of, like really blistering mad solos over the top here and there. Every piece of guitar work seems to serve the songs in general and the art that they have, but also the moment within that song, whatever it is. How important is getting the tone right to you as you're writing the guitar parts for this? Is that the first class citizen of every song as you go along?
Yeah, that's everything. I mean, I can't play like fast, really. Like I can't really play like solos in the traditional way. For me, it's always been more about like tight rhythms and just the overall tone and atmosphere of the song. I mean, it's all got to serve the song.
Good. I mean, it pays up. But I can understand cases made for other things. As more of a drummer than a guitar guy, I appreciate that, I think, in particular. Do you have a particular style or performance way of playing guitar that you prefer? Like, are you, like, whether that be palm muted chugs going along with things or the sort of dissonance ringing out of different strings and things? Is there one that gives you the most enjoyment to play either when you're recording or live, or do you like all of the variety therein?
I mean, I wouldn't say I prefer one or the other, but like, playing a good breakdown, those chugs, it's always fun.
We love breakdowns.
Who doesn't? I mean, I haven't met a single person who's like, man, I wish this song didn't have a breakdown. I haven't heard a single one.
If you don't like
Breakdowns
breakdowns,
rule.
you're lying.
Breakdowns rule.
Full stop. Absolutely fact. Another thing that interested me is, I mean, you've got a fucking phenomenal drummer. Like there are decent drummers in lots of bands. I think yours is a cut above the average, and that certainly helps. I mean, the first time I noticed that was in Better Written Villain. Early on in the song, there's a moment when he's just going in between the cymbals.
Yeah.
I'm just like, there's details in the drumming. It's
That
fantastic.
part is sweet. When he's like,
So good. There was a particular song as well in Change Agent where the drum pattern is like kick,
that's his
snare, and
favorite
it goes
song,
kick.
by the way.
Whose favorite?
That's the drummer's favorite song.
Is it? Because the pattern in it is like a kick, snare, kick, kick. It sort of leaves you wanting the next snare, but it doesn't deliver on it. How much of that side of things is the drummer going, this is how I want this to happen? Or how much of this is a kind of band conversation? Like, do you each write and kind of protect each other's writing on your own instruments? Or is it much more sort of collaborative for those?
For the most part, I usually write like a bass drum part for the whole song, and then he'll go through and like, add all the cool shit that a guitar player would never write.
Okay.
But I think actually what's funny about Change Agent is it's one of the only songs on the album that we wrote as a group together.
This is the first song, too.
That was the first song we wrote for this album, and he wrote all those drums, like that whole thing together in our old practice bass. So
No wonder it's his favorite song. It's like, I wrote all the drums.
yeah, he just likes it because it's one of the only songs that's heavy the whole way through.
It is the heaviest song, I guess, other than Target Acquired. But even that has a soft part.
Yeah.
I see. Yeah, good point. No, those are very satisfying. I had a question from a viewer by the name of Luke Mullins. How did you come up with the melody or vocal flow for the chorus funeral arrangements? Also, amazing vocals throughout the entire project. Because that chorus in funeral arrangements has a really satisfying sort of step down, and it goes higher, steps down again, and higher again, steps down, and then it comes down. There's a sort of arc to it. When you're writing your chorus melodies, are you... I guess I'll ask a more open question. How do you come up with your melodies?
I just go with whatever. I try not to follow Jim's lead too much, and because I've done that on other songs, and I feel like if I just go with my gut and just like listen to it a million times, I'll figure it out eventually. And that's the only thing I can say about that. I like it's writing melodies is, I would say, the easiest part, because punching the words in is the hardest part. You can just hum a melody. Once some sounds good, it's like, all right, that's the melody, and then you just have to figure out what you're going to say. That's how I do it. Everybody's different, though.
Yeah, I suppose people can approach it in different ways, but in my opinion, I think that writing melodies first is more likely to produce more enjoyable music, and then the hard part might be figuring out the lyrics to go with that. But if you write lyrics first, you might paint yourself into a corner that you then have to try and find a melody to match this particular run of lyrics. And is that the same for your verses as well, for example, or your scream parts? It's like, what do I want this to sound like, and then what am I trying to say, and how do I knit that through?
When I'm writing a song, I'm listening to it 1,000 times, and I'm just going ba 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 ba, or like just finding where I want the words to be, and then once I know where I want the words to be, I can, without even listening to the song, just like think about what I want it to be throughout. Like, dude, I don't rush songs anymore, or even try to. So I'll just spend some time every day just writing a little bit of a song, and then when I'm like, I'm done, I'll move on to something else or take a break, or I don't want anything to be forced or rushed.
Nice. And I imagine that might help remove the sort of perfection anxiety as well, because if you're not trying to overwork something, then it's easier to know, like, well, this felt good, so let's just stick with that and go.
Well, I do overwork things for a while, and then once I know what I want it to sound like, and I'll record the demo, and as long as Jim likes it, I know it's okay.
Is Jim the gatekeeper?
Jim knows what sounds good. He knows what sounds good, and he's not afraid to tell me if I could do better. And that's what somebody needs.
Yeah, that sounds healthy. It's not easy necessarily. Has that come over years of being in this band together, or in bands in general together?
I would say over the past few years, for sure. At first, you used to be pretty mad if I would
now,
give you
Kyle
notes.
tells me something. Oh, don't get me started. Kyle tells me shit. But yeah, if it sounds good to Jim, I'm like, all right, it's all right.
I had a question from Romans 1337. Unique naming scheme for song titles on this. What goes into those? Because they're not necessarily just like a main chorus lyric that you go, well, we'll just call that the title. And even you've got a bookend for this. In the first song, it's got brackets cold start, and the final song is brackets leave of absence. What does that signify as part of your sort of naming convention throughout this?
I have a list of random song titles that I add to it every day. I look at it. The song title usually comes last, but sometimes it comes first. I never really know which one it's going to be. And I kind of just go with whatever sounds good. Whatever, like, I'll give Jim like a list of names or something, whatever one is, like, I don't know, good enough. Song titles are hard. That's one of the hardest parts. Naming an album is even harder.
At least if you have a song title you like, you're like, well, let's make that the album then. We're good. That's one thing less to do.
Yeah. The album title actually came first with this one, and I just made so Jim wanted to get rid of the title track, but if I figured if I made it the title track, he couldn't get rid of it.
Sneaky. Really, that's great. Top tip for any other bands. That's how you do it. Your album artwork is one of the greatest I think we've had in recent. If you put together 30 album covers from this year, yours would stand out as being like a very recognizable one.
It would look at
I don't
you
really
too.
have a yeah. I don't even have a question here. I just want to say, like, that is a remarkably. Actually, I do have a question. Does an artist? Did you commission someone to make that, or where did that actual piece of art come from?
Yeah.
Give me a
my
creepy
tattoo
smile.
artist, Mikey Bear. He's the man. He painted it.
Wow. That's
Well, not painted it, but digitally did it. Painted wise.
Yeah.
very cool. No, that is great. Like when I was posting on my channel yesterday, asking if anyone had any questions, and I just put that album art. It's like they'll know exactly who I'm talking about with this. That's very cool, and very much in keeping with the creepiness. Big fan of that. There was a question as well from Jason Logan. What was the inspiration for Unreasonable Doubt? They were listening to the album well over 100 times since its release, and every time that track comes on, it hits different. It's one of the most relatable tracks they've heard, on top of being insanely emotional and passionate. So what was the inspiration behind Unreasonable Doubt in particular? What's that song grounded in?
Lyrically, I think that the theme of that song is the everlasting sense of doubt that we all have in ourselves, and whether things are going to get better, or whether we could be better, or whether, all my songs are to the listener's interpretation. So it's not like I want one song to be a specific thing for anybody. It's just like whatever it makes you feel, it makes you feel. And that's how I want our songs to be, whether it be good or bad.
Oh, sure. Good answer. The album opens with a quote, when isn't it strange to create something that hates you? How annoyed, confused, delighted were you to hear Poppy say that in the Van song with Bad Omens? Because what are the odds that in 1 year there are two songs that have that as the opener? How's that landed?
What happened?
Poppy did a song with Bad Omens, and one of the first things she says is like, "Isn't it strange to create something that hates you?" I was just like, "Huh?" That was earlier on.
Yeah, I mean, oh, you didn't know? Okay. I don't tell him these things because then he gets all worked up. But we had that sample in there from the demo. It was Kyle's idea. He put it in there.
This is the second time Kyle has taken some sort of sample from another song.
It's not from that. They are also sounding from something else. There is an original of that quote.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's not. It's perfectly fine.
We also did this like a year and a half ago, so I wouldn't stress about it. Yeah.
I don't think you should, if someone else does something that you've already originated, go like, well, now we can't. I would say that's
fucking
nonsense.
figures, okay?
Nice.
But anyways, we didn't plan for that, and it feels good, I guess.
Yeah, great minds and the rest. Is it from? Because I don't know the original. Is that from Frankenstein? It sounds like it might be from that sort of.
It's from Ex Machina.
Oh, that's a fucking great film. I don't remember that, but
I've never seen it.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. You would like it for sure.
Cool, I'll check it out. God damn it.
Now you absolutely do need to. Given the album's quite varied and you're so considerate about what you're doing, when you're writing a new song, how do you mentally approach it so that you're not writing something you've done before? Because I would do something as very simple as like, well, the last song I wrote in A, so I won't write the next song I write in A, and I'll see what happens. How do you ensure you're not just writing another song for the sake of it and make sure that you have a purpose behind it? Or is that, I don't know, Jimmy, are you writing demos as you go along and banking them and then...
He's fucking around with other tunings for sure.
Yeah. On the next one, there's going to be a lot of different tunings. I kind of just do this thing where I try and start songs different ways every time. And I try to never use the same, like, key at all on an album. At all.
Oh, that's hard.
I mean, I might be playing the same notes, but it doesn't sound the same.
Sure.
And I try and, like, each album, now I have this progression. I've used it once on this album, that's it. You know what I mean? Like, stuff like that. That's kind of how I rationalize it.
Right. I guess like stand-up comedians, they'll do an hour, and then when they do a special, they have to scrap that, and they'll never do that again and do something else next time.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Tricky. But again, it goes along with your kind of mantra of push yourself and try new things every time. But that's one way of, I guess, ensuring that happens. Interesting. Did I see you toured with Cane Hill?
Cane Hill rules.
Yeah.
That seems like a match made in heaven. I'm a huge fan of,
we love them
and their sound.
Especially
their new album is great.
Rules.
Yeah.
So sexy.
It's phenomenal. They've really tightened up their similarly, like they've kind of tightened up their choruses. The melodic choruses have come in from them because they've done a lot of wild experimentation in the past. Mm-hmm. This what they're doing now seems very kind of,
they figured it out perfectly.
It
sounds amazing, and we got to see them 30 times in a row, and it was awesome. They are a great band, and we love them. And I smoked a lot of weed with all of them.
Nice. You also have your heads rocked by the loudness of the bell playing by their drummer. I just ding, 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 ding. Fucking monster. So good. Did you learn anything in particular from them, or did they learn from you? Or the things you share with each other as you're touring together? Is there anything you took away from that tour from them in particular?
Yeah, I learned something from every band we play with, but they were definitely very helpful, especially with like insight on like what we need to do, not playing music, just like online, and like just getting more, how to get more views, and like what's more important to post and stuff, because like they're wizards with that shit, and that's so important anymore. It's very frustrating as a musician, but it is very important to have a very good and aesthetic online presence, and they nail it.
Yeah, I've noticed that from them as well. They're doing it well. They'll even have those sort of, I mean, I'll say this poorly, but like TikTok style sort of video where Elijah will be sort of mouthing along with the lyrics to the camera. And I have to imagine they're going, I wish we didn't.
I know what you're going to say. I was going to say it too.
There was one time on tour we were with them that they were filming one of those, and Ryan in our band, the one with the mustache, he comes up and just stares at them. And it's just like watching them make the video, and like making them very uncomfortable. So it was very funny.
They also locked me out of the venue while they were doing it, so I'm just standing there waiting for them to be done.
You done with your Instagram moment, lads? Come on. Thing is, I have to imagine that's not what they would dream to be doing, right? And they might think this.
No, they hate doing that. They fucking hate it.
Yeah.
But to reassure yourselves and others, not only are they good at it, but like fans recognize and understand it. We're not going to be like, oh, cringe. We're like, I get it. You know, I understand the world we operate in. And it's nice to see other little snippets and things, to see you in different environments and doing different things, different versions of you, you know, mouthing, whatever it is, like delivering those lyrics with something. Like there is no one watching going, ugh, I wish they didn't do that. Well, there might be some, but fuck them. Going like, whatever. I see it as a sort of modern day, like you'd have to not only just be in a band,
really,
but be good at making posters for your shows, right?
Yeah.
It's the modern day version of that. And it's tricky, but hopefully for yourselves, it's pushing yourselves forward, trying a new skill, because ultimately what you want is as many ears to hear the music that you're making. And there's many different ways to do that. Some of them are super effective. How are you sort of accepting of that, and do you have any plans for incorporating that in kind of your world? You're already doing that necessarily. I'm not too hip on your Instagram side, but how much of that do you embrace, or are you kind of trying to figure out as you go?
We're trying to figure it out.
Yeah, we're trying to figure out our thing like that. Like, you know, what is the style of content we can do that's not cringe or weird? Because like obviously we couldn't do just what they're doing. That would not work for us.
That's a really good way of putting it, because if you can find the way to do it yourself, it will be authentic, and it'll just be like another arm of your expression, much like your album art is another arm of expressing what it is that album is. But a tricky thing to figure out, I suppose. Do you get much help from, you know, the team around you for things like this, or are you expected to kind of build this from the ground up within yourselves?
Creatively, it's kind of all just us. Like, I mean, obviously, if we ask anybody for help on the team, they will help. But, like, I think for a lot of that stuff, everybody is hesitant to kind of tell us what to do, because I think with our band in general, we just don't listen to what anybody tells us anyway. So, like, literally, our manager, we were working on a new song, and he gave me, like, oh, you should change the end of this to a breakdown. And I was like, no.
And we're just like, fuck you.
And he was like, sorry, all right.
Yeah, I had an interview for this podcast with Finn McKenty, who's a YouTuber, and he was saying the conspiracy theories of like, man, this label ruined this band. They made them write awful music. Like, have you ever tried making a musician do anything? Like, it's like that they don't want to do. Fuck you. They're not going to do that. Come on. Yeah, unless it's authentically what you want to do, or it's like, oh, that's a good idea. Actually, I've been thinking about that, but otherwise,
they do that to us.
Yeah.
Wow. How? So we're a couple of weeks now post album, and I understand it's been a while in the making. What is your sense? Because I'm seeing an overwhelming positive response online from folks in the comments, and people. Before I got a chance to check it out, I was hearing people in the comments being like, "This is a potential album of the year. This is phenomenal." Like, how much of that are you allowing yourselves to enjoy? Or are you kind of going, well, I don't want to get wrapped up in what people think or the rest, so we just focus on what we're doing?
Me and you are polar opposites on this.
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
Me and Ryan and sometimes the other guys will literally look at like everything anybody says. Like, we'll watch, like, we've seen your reaction videos. We'll watch them all. Like, but Jack doesn't want to see it unless, you know, we send it to him for a reason. Like, oh, look, this person said something unique, or, you know, they really love it. Usually he's like, I don't care.
This is the thing. You either care about them all or you don't care about any of them. So, like, I don't want to get my fucking feelings hurt when somebody's like, this is fucking bullshit, this sucks. And I'm like, this is my whole life. So I just choose not to read any of it unless it's good, unless somebody shows me something. Or it's like the first top comments. Like, I don't scroll down. I don't ever want to see the bad ones because I'm very you know.
You make a good point, though, because you can't just choose to listen to one side of it, because that's not true, either side. If you just focus on the negatives, that's not an accurate representation of what people think on the broad scale. And if you just listen to the positives, it's also not an accurate representation of what people think all over the place. You either are in for all of it or none, I suppose.
Yes.
Wow.
And I want to make music that I like, and that's what we're doing. And I don't want to take influence from what other people are saying they like, because if they like it, that's sick. But if they don't, fuck.
But, like, at the same time, like, you can look at all of it and be like, that's cool, but I'm still going to do what I want anyway, which is what we did with this album. Like, we don't care what people said about narrative. We had already planned to do the singing and do all this shit anyway. So it doesn't matter either way.
True.
And there's going to be even more.
And yeah, great. And also, let's say that every single reaction channel on the internet said, like, this was awful. Let's say there's 100 of those channels. Maybe they're the only 100 in the world that said that, and everyone else is like, this is the fucking best thing I've ever heard. Like, you'll never know which voice is actually representative of a large number of people. So it's just random data points, essentially. But Jimmy, you said you check out a lot of those reactions. What draws you to that? How are you're clearly managing to take that in, but not have it influence what you're going to do in future. But what is it that you're getting from those kind of live reactions yourself?
I like kind of seeing what normal people think of our music, you know, because, like, we're a bunch of weirdos. So, like, you know, seeing a guy who's reacting to whatever metalcore is out now, you know what I mean? Yeah. Just, you know, looking at, you know, they're reacting to fucking Bring Me the Horizon or something like that. And, you know, what do they think about our band? Good or bad, it's still interesting to see someone else's perspective.
Yes, that makes sense. And for that to happen, you need to have some reference of what they have checked out before and what other things they're into to get that reference point. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'll look at what else they've done. You know, I'm not gonna just like, only watch our video, I'll look around.
Okay, cool, fair enough. But I know that if I were making music in the current era of reaction channels, all I would do is watch what people like. I never had that. Like you'd write some music and then you'd see numbers of views, but you'd get no idea like what are they actually did they actually lose their minds over the breakdown or not? Because you get a sense of that maybe live in the room when you're playing, but it's still not the first time. You're not blowing their minds necessarily.
Yeah, they love watching your reaction videos because when the breakdown comes in, you're like, oh, yeah.
Is that right? I don't know. I mean, thing is, I'm not in. There's different kind of reaction channels. There's ones who are like the entertainers who like go big, oh fucking shit. When that happens to me, it's unexpected. I'm much more
in a good
musical.
way. I'm not saying.
I know that. But yeah, like, oh fuck, Better Written Villain was good. That, but the people watching the album, by the end of it, I was completely fucked. Like it's so densely packed with interesting details. I was like, I don't know how to take that in. And I think but I knew at the time because of all those details, I'm like, when I hear more of this, it's going to just grow, and it absolutely has, which is a triumph for yourselves. And now, on the back of that large compliment, I have a question which I've been given here, which is so silly that I'm going to ask it. I think it's from Work It. It says, would you rather always be sticky or always be itchy?
Sticky.
It's so quick with that answer.
I hate being itchy.
Fair. But sticky? I don't know. It's annoying. Jimmy?
I'd probably take sticky just because when you're itchy, you feel it all the time. If you're sticky, you're not going to know unless you're touching something, right?
Yeah, you're just going to get sticky all over everybody else. Who cares about everybody else? I'm talking about me. I'm itchy. I don't want to be itchy.
I'm just saying if I'm sitting here right now and I'm sticky, I really wouldn't know, right?
That's also very true.
If I'm itchy, I'm going to want to itch.
Yeah.
Good point. Cool. You're constantly moving if you're itching. But if you're sticky,
nobody wants to itch.
Whereabouts are you folks based? I'm assuming somewhere south of the States. Is that where are you at?
Pennsylvania.
Okay, so not that south.
Yeah. What makes you think that we're southern? Actually,
I just there's a hint to an accent there. I was really enjoying it. I wasn't sure.
That's that Yinzer accent. It's Pittsburgh.
Okay. I'm not as au fait with that. I'm a Philadelphia Eagles fan. I go to Philly now and then.
Oh, ew.
Are you Steelers in that corner?
Yeah. Big Steelers fan. Especially Jim. He dies hard for it.
I don't follow sports really. That's his bit right now.
Fair enough. Now, you've hopefully got some interesting things coming up in your world. The album's been out for a bit. Do you have some tour plans? This episode will go out after any announcement would happen. So what have you got coming up that you're excited about?
Yeah, I mean, we actually have, for the first time ever, our whole next year planned.
Ooh.
But what just should have gotten announced was we're doing a co-headliner with the band Victims. I don't know if you're familiar, but...
Name rings a bell.
They're a little heavier than us, a little different kind of vibe, but, you know, we're doing our first tour where we're playing more than 25 minutes, so...
Wow, that's the typical amount. Are you mostly doing the earlier slots for the 25 minutes? Is that?
Yeah. I mean, 25, half an hour. Like, we haven't played a set this long, I think, probably ever, right?
Nope.
I'm so scared. You're really excited to try that with the new vocals. That's what I'm getting from...
I'm so scared. Steve, I'm scared.
You'll be fine. I have every faith in you. I believe in you, Jack. Is that a North American tour?
Yeah. Just US.
Oh, cool. Well, I'll start the petition to one day have you guys play in the UK at some stage.
We were going to, but we're not anymore.
Okay.
You can't say that.
I can't say that anymore.
Allegedly.
Fuck.
You would have liked to.
Well, we were going to.
Okay. It'll happen at some stage.
It will happen eventually.
It definitely will happen eventually.
Nice. Well, I'll absolutely be there to check that one out. Very excited for that when that eventually happens. And you were saying earlier, have you already got the songs written or most of them written for the next record? And that, because are you going to do that post tour, or is that just kind of up in the air? You don't really know.
Probably not for a while. I mean, you know, we have to tour off people watching first, but Yeah, I mean, I had them all written before we went to the studio to record this. So,
Oh God.
I mean, we're still working. Like, he still has to write vocals for almost all of them. So they're not anywhere near done. But like,
Okay.
the instrumental bass is done.
Wow.
And
exciting.
it's sweet.
Great. Sure it is. Well, no, that's a genuine, I'm sure it is.
Yeah, sure.
Well, folks, this has been an absolute joy. I've thoroughly enjoyed your music, and I'll continue to loop that, I've no doubt, as we approach the end of this year, for sure. I wish you every success with the tour coming up in the US, and I also look forward to the future music you're coming out with. Thank you very much indeed for your time and the insights you've shared about the details in the record. I found it fascinating, and I've really had a blast. So cheers, folks, and best of luck with your next
Thank you, bud.
endeavors.
Thank you for having us.
Well, that was an absolute treat to talk to Jack and Jimmy about that band, and in particular that excellent album, People Watching. I'll make sure to put some links in the description to their social media accounts so you can go and follow that band and keep up to date with their new music or new tours as and when they happen. Do go check out the album, People Watching, and give it a few spins. That is really well worth the time. Hopefully you enjoyed that conversation here, and do subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. There's more brilliant interviews coming up with some amazing people that you're not going to want to miss. There's also a link in the description to the Discord server if you want to talk to me about this interview or about music and rock in general. Happy to have you there. Thank you again for tuning in. Hopefully I'll see you in another episode really soon.